14 years apart, two benches of the same High Court looked at the same evidence and reached opposite conclusions in the 2006 Nithari killings case. Hello, this is Ruchi Bhattar, and in this video, I'll put you through a comparison between these two judgments given by two separate benches of the Allahabad High Court. One called Surendra Kohli a menace to the society and sentenced him to death. The other set him free, noting the procedural holes in the investigation. The Nithari case has now come to symbolize one of the deepest paradoxes in India's criminal justice system. How two courts examining the same material saw two entirely different truths. In the September 2009 judgment, the bench of Justices Imtiaz Murtaza and K.N. Pandey of the Allahabad High Court, while upholding the Ghaziabad Trial Court judgment, affirmed Kohli's sentence to death. They called Kohli's acts brutish and depraved and said the case fell in the rarest of rare category. To the judges, the chain of evidence from confession to skeletal remains was unbroken. 2 years later, in 2011, the Supreme Court upheld Kohli's death sentence, saying there was no reason to doubt the confession or the chain of evidence. But 14 years later, a different bench of the same High Court, examining the same set of facts, saw things differently. In July 2023, a bench of Justices Ashwini Kumar Mishra and Syed Aftab Hussain Rizvi acquitted Kohli in 12 other Nithari cases where trial courts had earlier imposed death sentences. This time, the High Court faulted the prosecution for failing to prove guilt beyond reasonable doubt and for carrying out what it called a casual and perfunctory investigation. It found that Kohli's confession had been taken after he had spent 60 days in custody without legal aid and without medical examination. His allegations of custodial torture were ignored. The judges concluded that the confession was neither voluntary nor true. The language used didn't match Kohli's educational level as he had studied only up to class 7. The court noted that Kohli himself had said that he was made to memorize the confession or Ratvaya Gaya, and the investigating officer's presence during the recording violated procedure. The court went further and criticized the CBI for ignoring a possible organ trade angle raised in a government report, which had observed that torsos were missing and the cuts on the bodies showed surgical precision. Instead, the judges said the casual and perfunctory manner in which important aspects of arrest, recovery, and confession have been dealt with are most disheartening, to say the least. The 2023 verdict concluded that the entire chain of circumstantial evidence had collapsed. Now, let's look at how the difference between the two judgments lay not just in their outcomes, but in their approach to justice. The two judgments stand as mirror images, one affirming guilt, the other embracing grave doubt. Together, they form a striking chronicle of the judicial reasoning shaped by different philosophies of criminal justice. In 2009, the court saw procedural formality as enough to sustain conviction. In 2023, the judges insisted on strict compliance with every safeguard, especially in a case involving death penalty. For the 2023 court, the lapses and inconsistencies by the CBI were enough to dismantle their entire case. 14 years earlier, the 2009 bench had stopped short of asking such questions, taking the prosecution's narrative largely at face value. The same evidence that once justified a death sentence now justified freedom. The same man who had been called a monster was declared wrongly convicted. The difference between the two judgments lies not merely in outcome but also in judicial philosophy. The 2009 bench accepted the integrity of the investigative processes, while in 2023, a different High Court bench viewed the same record through the prism of constitutional safeguards. In the 2009 ruling, the confession and recoveries were treated as mutually reinforcing. In 2023, both were seen as fruits of illegality. Thus, While the 2009 bench relied on procedural formality to sustain conviction, the 2023 bench insisted on constitutional fidelity to due process. On the opposite end, 14 years earlier, the 2009 bench did a surface level examination without probing deeper into the magistrate's certification of voluntariness, the investigator's claim of discovery, or the forensic expert's inferences. These two judgments, read together, frame a cautionary tale in India's death penalty jurisprudence. They reveal how justice can hinge not only on evidence, but on who interprets it and how. The gap between them became the basis for Surendra Kohli's later curative petition in the Supreme Court, which argued that two sets of outcomes resting on the same evidentiary foundation cannot lawfully coexist. The Nithari story, seen through these two rulings, is not just about a man's conviction or acquittal. It is about how India's justice system can both punish and protect, and how the same evidence, seen through a different lens, can change the entire course of a life. Thank you for watching.